Welcome to Zoom and Vroom at the Polk County History Center. Today we're going to discover more about Polk City, Lake Alfred, Auburndale, and Winter Haven. City, Lake Alfred, Auburndale, and Winter Haven form a constellation of cities across Florida's central corridor that are filled both with abundant history and natural habitats. Let's hit the trail and discover more. In preparation for today's Zoom and Vroom, please have your Zoom and Vroom packet and materials ready to go and a sense of adventure. We're going to hit the trail in 3, 2, 1. Hello everyone, and welcome to Zoom and Vroom live from the PGTV studio. My name is Jayme Jamison, and I am the curator of education and visitor engagement at the Polk County History Center. But more importantly, on the second Saturday of each month, I transform into your Polk County History and Heritage Fairy Godmother. A little housekeeping before we begin. We expect the program to last approximately 45 minutes. Can't stay with us that long? That's okay. You can catch us on repeat through PGTV's YouTube page or anytime on Facebook. Now today we are exploring some of the sites you can see from Polk City to Winter Haven along Polk County's central corridor. Settlement of this area stretches from the late 1860s through the 1920s and includes early citrus growers, health promoters, and a supposed oil field. Have you ever noticed the oil digging equipment off the side of I-4 and thought, what is that? Well, while they refer to Orlampa, a yet-to-be-realized future for Polk City, they also allude to the city's history of being touted as a potential gold mine, just waiting to be tapped. But prior even to that, though, there was a small community named Green Pond just on the outskirts of today's Polk City. This pioneer community is home to one of Polk County's oldest cemeteries, Green Pond Cemetery. Founded in 1879, the cemetery is an intriguing walk through Florida history. Located within the bounds of Florida's Green Swamp, Green Pond Cemetery is among the oldest in Polk County. The founders of the Green Pond area were Abraham Taylor Williams and his wife Penchita Hancock Williams from Green Pond, South Carolina. The original settlement began in 1873. Their son, Peter E. Williams, was one of the first 2 people interred in the cemetery in 1879. As you walk about the cemetery, note the variants in the memorials and headstones and see if you can locate the impressive Florida cowboy who keeps watch and serves as a reminder of those who came before. Just a little insider's tip. After you visit the cemetery, make sure to make your way back through downtown Polk City to check out the Van Fleet Trail and grab some amazing ice cream at the Polk City Ice Cream Company. Seriously, I have 5 words for you. Cotton candy ice cream burrito. From Polk City, we make our way toward Lake Alfred. Known by many names, Lake Alfred was originally incorporated as Fargo in 1913. To guide us on our tour of Lake Alfred, we've invited Connie White, a member of the Lake Alfred Historical Society, to join us today. Connie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm really excited to learn a lot about Lake Alfred today, so I hope you brought a lot of knowledge.
Good. Yes, we're talking about one of my favorite subjects. So.
Oh, great. So I have to say I'm kind of ashamed of myself. I live in Auburndale. And as you know, we're like, holler out the window neighbors between the 2 cities. And there's not much that I know about Lake Alfred. So Tell us a little bit about its origins as Fort Cummings and where it's come through today.
Okay, all right. Well, Fort Cummings was established in 1839 during the Second Seminole War. And it was part of a line of forts that led from Fort Brooke in Tampa and went down to Fort Mellon in Sanford. So from what I understand, this line of forts was basically built like what would be a day's travel away.
Okay.
So, and somewhere I'm thinking I read that it was like 12 miles. Each one was basically about 12 miles in between.
I'd love to walk 12 miles a day.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine under those conditions and circumstances. Ooh. But anyway, this line of forts, this road that was created, which was basically just a trail road that led from one fort to another. This road eventually became the line for the railroad. Okay. When the railroad industry came in, they said, "Oh, we have a road
Convenient.
already here. Let's work from this." So, you know, the Alfred Parslow and Mr. Van Fleet came in and tried to establish a railroad, and they did quite a bit of work on it, did pretty good, but they ended up eventually selling out to Henry Plant.
Okay.
But that was the origins of the trail road and how it led into the railroad.
Okay, leading into the railroad. Now, I recently got to actually listen to a presentation about these forts and the military roads across Central Florida, and I'm amazed by the sheer ingenuity to get these roads, or basically trails, built. Clearing land, crossing the marshes, all sorts of crazy stuff. Now, we get through that period, and you've got the railroad, and you've got this establishment of basically this unpopulated area. Right. So how does the population come about in Lake Alfred? And can you tell us a little bit about some of the names that were used to describe the area?
Okay. I believe that Lake Alfred has had more name changes than anybody in the county, any other community in the county, maybe even in the state. We've had a few. So when Parslow and Van Fleet made their way into the Lake Alfred area, they named the area Juanita.
Okay.
I'm not sure why. I don't know where it came from. It's spelled the same way as the other Juanita, the current Juanita community
out in Winter Haven.
Around Winter Haven. I don't know the story of why, but anyway, we were Juanita. So the earliest records that I can find, it was an 1886 map that shows Juanita. And as you progressively look through these maps during the late 1800s, you see that we actually have two names on the maps. And we were Juanita based on what the post office was calling us. But we were also called Bartow Junction at the same time because of the railroad, which we had a branch line from Bartow that went down to Lake Alfred and then kind of did a turnaround and went back. So we were kind of a dead end, but that's how we got the name Bartow Junction. So we had two names there for a while.
Not confusing at all.
Not confusing at all. And then to add to that, we had several Armenian families who lived in the area. And so locally we were kind of known as Little Armenia or New Armenia, but that was never an official name. That was just kind of a local name. Then, around about 1907, I believe, we officially became Chubb, and which we were named Chubb after a state politician.
Okay.
I don't know exactly who it was,
sort of
but
reverence
that's So we were Chubb for a little while, and then when Frank Gardner came into town, he was from Fargo, North Dakota, and he and some of his business partners that came into town, also from Fargo, they started the Florida Fruitlands Company, and they decided that Fargo would be a better name for the town. So we became Fargo. A few years later, the post office said, no, you can't be Fargo because
we've already got one, right?
We have Largo in Florida, and this was before zip codes, so there was constant confusion between Fargo
handwriting and
exactly. So the post office said, no, you've got to change it again. So this time there were public meetings, and everybody kind of put their input in.
Okay, a little more democratic.
Right, right. So they came up with, let's just call ourselves Lake Alfred, because the name of the lake by that time was Lake Alfred. It had been named after Alfred Parslow when he came in for the railroad. So we had Lake Alfred, and everybody just said, let's just go with the name of the lake and let's keep this simple.
It's our most recognized landmark.
Exactly, exactly. So that was in 1915 when we officially became Lake Alfred. So
That's
yeah,
really neat.
we've had some interesting names.
Hey, but it makes you stand out, right?
That's
in a
true.
crowd.
Yes.
And always have something to talk about at city dinner parties.
Right. Remember when? Remember when we were
New
called?
Armenia?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are Lake Alfred now, and you don't really have very a thick North Dakota accent or anything, because that would stand out in the state of Florida.
Sure would.
Now, one of the things that I love about the Lake Alfred, not the Fargo, the Lake Alfred Historical Society, is its relationship with the city. It seems like the Historical Society and the city are working very well to preserve some of the history.
Yes. Our city government is just, they're awesome. They are very history-minded people, and
fantastic.
they have approached us in many instances and said, hey, let's do a marker at such and such, and anytime that we have had an idea and we run it by them, oh yeah, that's great. And we've had a lot of cooperation. Back in 2015, when we did our 100-year celebration, the city approached us and wanted to recognize some of the historic buildings that are in town. So we put the information together, and they ordered the signs, and now we have 5 buildings that have these nice big markers, including the Historical Museum, that's one of them, that these markers tell the history of that particular building and when it was built and that kind of thing. So we've done that. The city was involved when we did our citrus label signs, which is part of the county driving tour.
Citrus Heritage Trail.
So we have that. We have 2 markers in town that are that were achieved through the Polk County Historical Commission. So the city takes care of those, maintains those. And let's see, what else do we have? Well, okay, we've got, we have new markers that are yet to be installed. We have, this again was something where the city came to us and said, let's do this. And they wanted to recognize some of the residents, deceased residents, that had contributed a lot to the city. So we came up with information for these distinguished individuals, and those markers are not installed yet, but they will be probably by the end of this month, and they're going to go along our walking trail that runs through the city. So we have that, and then our newest and I think most recognizable lately, most famous, is our fish sculptures.
Yeah, tell us a little more about these giant fish. Well, I mean, they're true like fish tails. If a fisherman caught this, they would not be over exaggerating.
They're huge, and that was the inspiration of 2 of our city commissioners, former city commissioners, who came up with this idea. That was Charlie Lake and John Duncan. Oh,
with a last name like Lake, you got to come up with a fish theme.
So it took a while I think it took a while to actually find some place that could accommodate making what they were.
Yes, pun intended.
Yes. So we have the one that's actually very authentic fish painted and everything, that's in front of the City Hall. And then we have 3 more that we ordered just plain white, nothing on them, no. So we contacted some of the local schools to see if their art department would be interested in painting, which they did. So now we have these 3 fish, which are they're placed different parts of the city that were done by our local students.
Neat.
So,
are there any plans to add more as time goes on?
Yes, there are a couple of more that are in the works that we'll see how they turn out and where they will be placed. I'm not sure where they're going to end up.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic, especially the marker program just in general. I'm so excited to hear some of the individuals from Lake Alfred's history being represented.
Yes.
I know that on occasion when I've visited you, I've had a chance to meet one of those remarkable individuals, Miss Betty Shin, and there is just some incredible history just in her life. I can't imagine in some of these other individuals that you guys selected.
Yes, it was hard to narrow it down, really, because the initial list, I think we had about 25 or 30 people on there, and we said, well, that's a little much.
Yeah.
So we had to pick and choose, but with the understanding that more markers will probably come in the future. So that made us feel better.
Yeah, that does help when you're trying to whittle down the list, knowing, okay, we can't get everybody right now, but we'll get some later. Well, I think we had to talk about some guilty pleasures here. I know that Mackay Gardens is just the hot spot in Lake Alfred. I think a lot of people go out there to have their pictures taken. Guilty. What do you think are some additional sites that people are missing if they go to Lake Alfred and they only go to Mackay?
Oh, well, I think you would have to start your visit at Lake Alfred at the Historical Museum.
That sounds like a smart place to start.
That's a good place to start, not only because of what we have in the museum to offer. Our displays are, I believe, pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
And our volunteers are very knowledgeable. So if anybody has any questions, they are there to answer. We have recently just started another project. We have so many historic homes in town. Yeah. And we already had 3 models of some of those historic homes.
I saw that on your Facebook page. You have a very talented model maker.
Oh, we did. We tried to find the gentleman who had done those first 3 original models, and we couldn't locate him. So then it became a search because we wanted more done. Yeah. And we found Supex Studios in Claremont.
Oh, okay.
And they have done an amazing job. So we have 2 new models. One of them is the Mackay house, and the other one is the Gardner house.
Oh.
So, and we have a couple more maybe in the works. We're working out details on, so we're pretty proud of those. So anyway, start at the Historical Museum.
Okay.
And while you're there, you can pick up our brochure that lists all the great sites in town. The brochure has all the addresses and facts, so then you can just turn it into your own little driving tour.
You just plug it into your phone and stop by stop.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
So there's a lot of nice things to see.
I'll have to get out there and see some more. It's such an easy drive, and especially the way that the downtown is laid out. It feels like it's just really easy to get back and forth through Lake Alfred. So there's some good city planning going on there too.
Yes, there is.
All right, Miss Connie. So now, what are some of the other ways, other than visiting the Historical Museum, going out to Mackay, having events at Mackay, what are some ways in which people can support Lake Alfred's community history?
Wow, okay. Well, you can always become a member of the Historical Society. There's our Facebook page is pretty, we have a lot of followers on that, which is just Lake Alfred Historical Society, easy to find, easy to find. Our website, lakealfredhistoricalsociety.org. You can find out all about anything, any current events, anything that we have going on. It's going to be on there. Okay. And at the bottom of every page on the website is a little link to Amazon Smile. So if you'd like to, next time you order through Amazon, do it through that link, and we get a little benefit from that.
That's good to know.
So yeah, there's that, and always volunteers. Always need volunteers, man hours, and contributing. I mean, any artifacts that are Lake Alfred related, we'd love to put them on display, donated or loaned. We do loans.
Yeah, and I think I saw on your Facebook page, you guys are pretty good at doing some crowdsourcing too. One of the best ways that I've found that people can get involved with history is through crowdsourcing. So you guys might put a photo up and say, hey, here's the class of 1923. Who knows who this little kid on the end at the right is, because that's the only one we can't identify.
Right, right. We have a good group in Lake Alfred that love to get to see photos like that, and the history, their own history. And
what's interesting too is that I say a photo from the 1920s, but I almost find that photos from the 70s, you know, are getting a lot of traction because it has this certain nostalgia now to it, to those people that are retiring. And then for my generation, you know, that's really close to when we were born, so it's still like, oh wow, that's old, but it's not quite me yet.
I know. It still seems hard for me to realize that in the 70s was really as far back as it was. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Somebody told me something the other day that, you know, 1990 was like 30 years ago, and I said, no, it wasn't. No, it can't be that long ago. We're not approaching that yet, but we have.
Yes, we have.
All right, so now perhaps the hardest question of the segment, and the most important for my families out there. They've been out exploring Lake Alfred all day, and they're starving. Where is the best place to go get something to eat?
Wow, that's a tough one, because we have a lot of restaurants, and they're all really good. So
yeah, and are they all kind of centrally located too, right? Yeah,
they are pretty much. But I would say, okay, if someone wanted to stick with the historical theme of the day, I would say Lavender and Lace Tea Room is a nice place to go, because it is located in, the building is a former residence that was built in the 1920s.
Okay, so it's
a historical home. Gary's Oyster Bar.
I've heard lots of it.
It has been talked about the 70s. I believe it was started in the 70s.
Okay.
So, and has always been very popular, always crowded. But when you go in, there's lots of memorabilia and things to look at inside the restaurant. So it's very historical. And let's see, the Barn Antiques. There's a restaurant out there called the Back Porch Restaurant.
Okay.
And the Barn Antiques has been there for, I think, about 50 years also.
Yeah, something like that.
So, you know, that's a historical site also. Actually, it's on our list of historical sites. So
there you go.
But aside from that, just my personal favorites, Cornerstone Grill is always really good. Lake Alfred Diner is good. Luigi's is good. They're all good. You can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong. Do you hear that, my Auburndale friends, my fellow Auburndalians? We can do a hop, skip to Lake Alfred to grab dinner one night.
There you go.
Well, Connie, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope to see lots of our friends out in Lake Alfred exploring. You know, enjoy Mackay, but then get out there and check out what else Lake Alfred has.
Exactly, exactly. And I appreciate you having me.
Keep up to date with the happenings in Lake Alfred by following them on Facebook at Lake Alfred Historical Society. You can also learn more about the Lake Alfred Historical Society by visiting, and we're going to put it right down here, www.lakealfredhistoricalsociety.org. Following your visit to Lake Alfred, set your heading southwest for Auburndale. Originally founded as sanitaria along the shores of Lake Mariana, the settlement shifted from the area now known as 5 Points to the downtown district that exists today.
Today's installment on the Heritage Trail brings us to historic Auburndale. Situated between scenic lakes and vital transportation lines, Auburndale's historic district tells the stories of an area rich in agricultural land that quickly developed into a hub of economic activity more than a century ago. The first settlers arrived in Auburndale in the 1870s and 1880s as word spread of Central Florida's plentiful natural resources and premier agricultural and cattle grazing lands. Polk County received a huge boost as Henry Plant's South Florida Railroad laid track through the area in the early 1880s and connected the county with larger regional economic markets. The efforts of early railroad developers piqued the interest of northern investors as clever marketing campaigns touted the investment potential of the area. Early settlers, including Frank Fuller from Chicago and Tennessee physicians Drs. John and Hugh Patterson, purchased land and proclaimed the remarkable health benefits awaiting newcomers. The Patterson doctors acquired land east of today's location of downtown Auburndale and named their new town Sanitaria. A number of families established homesteads in the growing town, which included a post office, church, and sawmill by 1883. Although Sanitaria residents requested the construction of a depot in their tiny town, a site 1 mile away was selected in 1884, establishing the current-day location of Auburndale. The name of the depot was chosen by the wife of the publisher of the Boston Herald in honor of her hometown in Massachusetts, after the couple received a letter from an acquaintance in charge of the construction of the line through the area. Many residents in nearby Sanitaria relocated to be closer to the depot, and by the turn of the century, Auburndale boasted a thriving commercial core of 1- and 2-story businesses. However, a series of devastating fires destroyed Auburndale's business sector in the 1910s, promoting the construction of new, stronger masonry buildings. Thought to be the only building to survive the numerous fires, the first State Bank of Auburndale opened to the public in 1912 and remained in the triangle or flat iron-shaped building until the 1930s. One of Auburndale's oldest commercial structures, the masonry vernacular style building, also provided space for a furniture store, post office, and restaurant. Today, the distinctive building houses professional offices. Auburndale, like other parts of the state, experienced its most dynamic period of growth in the 1920s during the Florida land boom. Completed in 1922, the Auburndale Citrus Growers Association packing house was strategically constructed near an Atlantic Coastline Railroad spur line. The rectangular building had a steel truss roof supported by brick pillars, spacious loading bays with large windows, and a mission-style front entrance that led into an office and reception area. The Auburndale Citrus Growers Association was incorporated in 1909 as a nonprofit cooperative and was one of the original members of the larger statewide Florida Citrus Exchange, which played a vital role in early growth in the state's citrus industry. The building was acquired by the Adams Packing Association in the 1940s and remained in use until the 1950s. One of the few historic packing houses left in the county, the building was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. The growth of population and the increase in commerce in the 1920s also led to the expansion of the infrastructure and services provided by the city. Rail lines from the Atlantic Coastline and the Seaboard Airline Railroads intersected the city during the 1920s, carrying passengers to the area and Auburndale's abundant agricultural products to market. The Seaboard Airline Railroad Depot was constructed in 1927 in a Mediterranean revival style popular during the 1920s and featured a tiled roof, stucco exterior, and covered walkway for passengers. Following the close of the aging depot, the city of Auburndale purchased the building in 2000 and relocated the structure to the downtown site of the former Atlantic Coastline Depot. Today, the restored building can be rented for community and special events. Auburndale's distinctive City Hall, designed by Lakeland architect Roland C. Buckley, was also built in 1927 by Auburndale contractor Paul Smith. The L-shaped yellow brick building was a splendid example of Italian Renaissance revival style, anchored in the center by a large 3-story belfry tower. The building contained matching wings and a main entrance located on the first floor of the octagonal tower. The substantial City Hall housed various offices, including the city clerk, city manager, and police department. A portion of the second floor space was used as a public library, which was managed by the Women's Club until a new library was built in 1951. The first floor of one wing was also designed with a single bay to house a fire truck. The fire department operated out of the building until 1954, when a new space was completed across the street. The building continues to function at City Hall today and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
After your walk through the historic district, don't forget to grab a bite at either the Shake Shack or Sweet Magnolia's Tea Bistro, two of Auburndale's homegrown and beloved restaurants. Round out your visit by heading over to Lake Ariana and dip your toes in the water. Although now it's the site of the Auburndale Yacht Club, these shores were once home to the historic Max Beach. Our last stop today curves back southeast to the ultimate Florida town, Winter Haven. Not only is Winter Haven named just so to attract northern settlers, it was also home to Florida's first theme park, Cypress Gardens. And although that park is now Legoland, you can still walk around and enjoy the old gardens while visiting. You may have known about Cypress Gardens, but did you know that just like Lakeland, Winter Haven is home to a prolific collection of architecture that is listed on the National Register of Historic Places? Well, I bet if you grew up in Winter Haven, you've likely walked into a building designed by Gene Leedy, and that includes City Hall. Or you might have heard of Leedyville, where a collection of homes designed by Gene Leedy in the 1950s can be found. Let's hop on the trail and see just what this modern architect who favored precast concrete conjured up.
Housing dominated the conversation just at the time when Gene Leedy graduated from Florida University in 1949 with a degree in architecture. Leedy immediately headed down to Sarasota, where the masters of a new modern architectural style were beginning to assemble. It was Paul Rudolph who gave Gene Leedy his first start. Within a few years, and after a stint in the Air Force, Leedy earned his own first solo commissions: Winter Haven Sparrow Residence and the Cranny Spec Houses, the homes on Drexel Avenue Northeast that have recently been added to the National Historic Register.
Gene spoke a lot about Frank Lloyd Wright. He spoke a lot about Rudolph, but he was particularly influenced by Wright. He told me he had a chance to meet him when Wright was doing Florida Southern College. He used to always pull out Frank Lloyd Wright's Wasmith edition, which he was fortunate to have one copy of those, which I always wanted to get from him. But he always talked about Wright in relationship of space, you know, again, connecting the interior and exterior space, the compression of space, honesty of materials. Those things really you can see in Gene's work.
But it was Paul Rudolph, the architect whose inventive use of materials and groundbreaking designs, and who created a new American tropical style that later led him to the deanship of Yale School of Architecture.
Some of his early work, like his office building done in 1963, still beautiful today. The Sparrow House, which is right across from the Dorman House, done almost 20 years apart. Totally different homes, you know, from a one-story post and beams, delicate steel building to a powerful multi-story pre-stressed concrete double T right across the street from each other, but equally powerful.
Gene Leedy was a giant of Florida architecture. He was one of the leading practitioners of the Sarasota School of Architecture movement, and through him and through that movement, I was exposed to an array of amazing modern architecture. Modern architecture dating back to the 50s and the 60s, really the heyday of that mid-century modern movement in Florida. And you know, all of his ideas of space and structure just got embedded in my head. So this house and many on the street were designed in the mid-50s. I believe they were completed in late 50s, 57, 58. There is 10 total, and these are the Craney spec homes. And these are the homes that are just being celebrated now as part of a National Historic District.
He did courtyard houses. Whoever listens to this, the one thing that he did was create courtyards so people could live outside, inside their home. And today, homes are objects. They don't have any courtyards, they don't have any enclosure, they don't have any privacy. Jayme Leedy is a fabulous architect, a great man for Central Florida, for the state of Florida, for the United States.
You can take a digital tour of Leedy's architecture by visiting www.jaymeleedy.com/tour. Now, I think you are just about ready to zoom out of here, but you might have noticed that we didn't have a book for this month. So here is my shout out to any children's authors out there. I really wanted to share about cemeteries from a children's perspective, and there just were no books. So if you're looking for a new topic, call me and I'll give you some great ideas. Now, if you are heading out on the trail and you do have children, please come by and visit us where you can pick up your Explorer's Packet. This month it includes a very bendiful little pony, some barnyard bubbles, okay, and this is just great, a little flexi bass fish for Lake Alfred, and there's no tall tale in this, you actually caught it, and a cheat sheet of funerary art for when you're out in the cemetery. It'll tell you a little bit more about some of the symbols you might see out at Green Pond. And then, of course, don't forget your Zoom and Vroom driving guide. We have these at the History Center, but if you would like it emailed to you, please let me know and we can email you a PDF copy. We hope you enjoyed discovering the Quad Cities that form the heart of Polk County. Don't forget to join us on August 14 when we uncover a few of the magnificent museums of Polk County. Happy trails!